And Mark, let's move into our last topic. Before we do, going to plug the Twitters for this. Go check out Mark at the with two E's, Mark Weber. I'm at Ricky Widmer. Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. Make sure to hit us up if, let's say, you're not a comment person guy. Maybe you're in the audioverse and you're listening to my voice rather than watching me talk. Go ahead and hit us up on Twitter with anything we've been talking about today on the podcast. But Mark, let's take a look, non-draft topic. Let's go and look at the Denver Broncos. They made their hire of Vic Fangio. I know I don't think you cried. You kind of popped a little sorrow champagne, poured one out for your homie who's not with the Chicago Bears anymore, although you're happy that you have Chuck Pagano.
Yeah, I think Chuck Pagano will be good.
As your DC. I'm going to ask you, Vic Fangio, how soon can he bring the Broncos back to the playoffs?
Here's the thing about Vic Fangio. He's gonna be good for the Broncos because they've got a good defense already. He's gonna make it even better. The hard thing for Vic Fangio is he's got to rely on John Elway to someday give him a quarterback. Because Case Keenum was most successful with Pat Shurmur, a guy who is offensive. Like, we're just going to go high percentage. We're going to make sure you don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
And also they had a really good run game. That helps out quite a bit. You're not going to get that from Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio is not going to be there and go, all right, Case, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be very methodical with the ball. Vic Fangio is going to say, I'm sorry, what's your name? He doesn't know who Case Keenum is. I'm being a little flippant with this, but he doesn't know who Case Keenum is. He doesn't care who Case Keenum is. He's going to get an offensive guy to do that for him. And that was originally the plan with Gary Kubiak, and then that didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
But Vic Fangio is going to be interested in making this defense great, and he's going to do a good job. He needs John Elway to give him the offensive talent to make that better, and then also go ahead and get that offensive coordinator who hopefully sticks around for a while, so that way they can be good and just kind of run the show.
Well, the thing that I originally really liked was as soon as Vic Fangio was hired, there were even before he was hired, Gary Kubiak's going to come back and be the offensive coordinator. And after they hired Vic Fangio, I'm like, ooh, I like that. Vic can worry about that. Like, Vic can focus on the defense. He's basically doing what Matt Nagy had. I'll focus on the offense. I'll ignore, like, you're a head coach level to where I can just ignore you and let you worry about the
defense.
Well, for him, it'd be the offense, Vic Fangio defense. Like, almost like a Hugh Jackson, Greg Williams. I'll focus on the offense until I get fired. You can focus on the defense.
Until you eventually take my job.
Coach. And then you can let Freddie Kitchens be the OC until he eventually takes your job. It's kind of like a man-eat-man world.
It's fun
out there for Cleveland. But then, Gary Kubiak backed out. And I'm happy because now he's an offensive advisory role.
That's an interesting one. Offensive advisor / assistant head coach.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like he's the Hugh Jackson of the Minnesota Vikings.
He is.
Until, the Minnesota Viking fans that are not like myself, because there were people calling for Zim Dog's head, which I was like, why? Coach Zimmer is not the problem here.
Should fire him immediately.
Do you want to go back to the Leslie Frazier days?
Yes.
Because I don't. Do you want to go back to the Brad Childress days?
Please do.
Because I don't. But, I mean, the big thing is they got locked down their offensive coordinator. And for me, I almost feel like it's a scramble at this point. And the reason why I say that is, like, the big report that I'm seeing from, like, yesterday is Broncos interviewing previously denied Rich Scangarnello, where it's like, all right, you denied this guy the job. Now you're you're like, all right, we're going to bring you in for the interview now, to where it's almost like, oh, shit, what do we do? What do we do? Because the Broncos, to me, are not going to be successful if they don't get the offensive coordinator that can handle the offense competently while Vic does his thing with the defense.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the tough thing, and maybe it takes a little bit to figure out. But I think what's going to help Vic Fangio is, this defense is going to be good. It is. So that's going to give him enough time to hopefully let the offense get figured out with coaching, with getting a quarterback someday. That's going to be, and of course, you just lost Demaryius Thomas. You could use a wide receiver. That'd be nice. That's going to be very important. So the thing that, of course, just makes me skeptical, I love John Elway as a quarterback. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks, but he is proving he's not very good at the whole GM thing.
Well, and before I say what I'm going to say, I need to correct myself. Wasn't denied by the Broncos. He was blocked from interviewing with the Broncos by the 49ers until they pulled a USC and was like, fine, you can interview with the Denver Broncos. But even John Elway, it's been reported, he said recently that it was a mistake. Like, he admits it was a mistake to hire Vance Joseph. Like, he shouldn't have done that and should have maybe went somewhere else with that. It's easy to say that.
It's kind of
2
a
years
dick thing
after.
to say, though. Too.
It's John Elway. Do you know him to do anything else?
I know, but just to be like, yeah, you know what? That guy was such a big mistake. Fuck that guy. I know we fired him, but I really want to rub the salt in the wound and tell him that he was bad.
Like, let's be completely honest. I've seen commenters whenever we talk about the Broncos that are like, get rid of that scumbag John Elway. Like, great quarterback, but get rid of that scumbag GM John Elway, and then we'll be able to win again.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, it's a two-parter where you mentioned it earlier. Oh, well, what do they do at quarterback? Because even John Elway has called Case Keenum a short-term fix. And I see here, this is from 24/7 Sports, the Broncos are among 6 teams in the race for Joe Flacco. Here's the thing. Let's say they do get the Rick Scangarnello, who is with the 49ers. He's worked with guys like Jimmy Garoppolo for a little bit, Nate Mullins, C.J. Beathard. Can he do enough if they get Joe Flacco to be that veteran quarterback for the Broncos?
I think that they probably could. They are a team where if they have this defense and if they can get this offense some weapons, Philip Lindsay's a great running back and will be potentially a great future running back.
And when they get Royce Freeman too healthy.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of things to build around. The problem is whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, Nick Foles, whoever it could be, there's not really anybody for you to throw the ball to.
Unless you're going to make a trade.
Yeah.
Could they go and make a trade for Antonio Brown?
Make a trade or just draft a wide receiver. I mean, there's going to be wide receivers available.
Mark's like, I don't want to bring in that diva. Draft. Go to the draft.
Yeah, I don't think that Vic Fangio is going to have any interest, and I know he's not the GM. He doesn't make those decisions, but I don't think he has any interest in getting that. And I think that John Elway remembers what it was like to have a media circus with Tim Tebow and says, maybe we don't need a big diva here on this team.
I like how you bring up Tim Tebow. Remember, they had a diva wide receiver before he got traded to the Bears.
Oh yeah,
they had a diva wide receiver.
Yeah,
I don't think
Brandon Marshall.
I don't think John Elway was there during that time. But
no.
Look back at the history. Like, you had a diva wide receiver once. How did that turn out?
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where I don't think he is going to want to, get involved with that. I think I'm going to be very interested to see what that market is for Antonio Brown, just to figure that out, because I really wonder how many teams really want to dive into that guy who's ripping apart the team the first moment they start to lose.
Well, and especially too, where and I get that analysts on ESPN, how much of it is what they really mean, and then some is them digging into because Dave was talking about how he was listening to Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith, I guess, said something like, oh, yeah, on the show today, he's like, I didn't believe the point that I was coming at. But he's like, if you don't come at it with kind of that feeling, with that gusto behind it, nobody's going to believe you. No one's going to take you seriously. So he's like, you got to come at it with that energy. And I mean, what Ryan Clark says about Antonio Brown, I hear the words and I look at Ryan Clark's face and I go, all right, he might be telling the truth here, because it looks like on his face he doesn't really like Antonio Brown much. Maybe because he went after respected coaches that guys like Ryan Clark, guys that are for the team, respect your coaches kind of guy, kind of rubbed them the wrong way, especially when Antonio Brown went after Dick LeBeau. To me, there's that double edge of like, all right, is this really happening? Is ESPN like, hey, really dig into this because it'll get us viewers and stuff for everything? To me, I wonder with this whole situation, are we seeing right away? Because I said before when we talked about Black Monday, that Vic Fangio was the perfect guy for this job. Because I think he's the guy that can stand up to John Elway and won't let Elway push him around. But I fear because of the whole uncertainty right now with the offense, is John Elway and this management setting him up for failure to where 2 years down the line, the Broncos are doing this whole dance and pony show again. It's
possible.
Where it's like Vic Fangio, wow, was a really good defensive coordinator. Man, that defense looks good. And he got fired.
Well, the interesting thing, too, is like he's been a guy who's never had it. He's been in the league for so long and never has opportunity. And part of that, I think people always think of is his personality. He's not that, rah-rah kind of head coach. He is very kind of timid and he's sarcastic and it's funny, but like, he's just kind of the guy who's up in the booth and calls some plays and that's about it. Obviously there's more to it than that, but he isn't a guy who's going to be on the sideline yelling.
Do you think, and I don't know if they've said anything about this, he's going to be on the field now as a head coach. You can't be a head coach in the booth, right?
I mean, you could.
I can't even remember the last time we've had a head coach that was in the booth.
I mean, if you're going to let your offensive coordinator run the offense, there's no reason why he can't be in the booth. I mean, I don't know. They probably did answer that question by now. I didn't watch his press conference when he got introduced. So I'm sure the question got answered. But to me, I do have that fear too, and I do have that fear for Vic Fangio of, is he going to be someone who can translate well into this role? But so much of that's going to depend on what else he gets. It's the hiring of assistant coaches, of head coaches. And I mean, a guy like Ed Donatel is going to be an awesome addition to his defensive unit. But once again, that's the defensive side.
I also like how linebacking coach. Let's bring over the guy I had in Chicago.
I mean, that's basically what he's doing. Just going, and that's the same thing with Donatel. It's like, all right, my defensive backs were good. All right, let's bring that guy over.
Yeah,
it's just shift them all over because it's his defense.
I also looked up. So interesting, John Elway as an administrator. So in his current role as GM and president or vice president of football operations, he was not in that role when
Brandon
Marshall was on the team. He took over that role right before Brandon Marshall went from Miami to Chicago. However, he was that was the Colorado Crush. Okay, I thought it was Denver Broncos CEO and owner, and I was like, what? But no, he was with the Colorado Crush when Brandon Marshall was with the Broncos, so they didn't overlap in that sense. With me, this is going to be interesting because the Broncos, are they a bad team? No, they've got pieces, especially if Vic.
Yeah, you were very high on them in the preseason.
Like, think about this, okay? Like, just put this into your mind.
I'm working on it.
Vic Fangio could do it. Khalil Mack. Now he's got Von Miller. Arguably, and I'm going to say arguably, because there's some people, especially this year, would probably rank Khalil Mack above Von Miller.
For sure.
Overall career, if you're saying best linebackers in general, most people would be listing off Von Miller. Like, they'd be close, but maybe Von Miller might be
Von Miller was also on better defenses than Khalil Mack has been until this year.
But now with Vic Fangio, it's like, are we going to see? Is it going to be too much hype for, look at what we got from Khalil Mack. Yeah. We can expect that from Von Miller.
Well, here's the thing about Von Miller in that case. It's very much I hope you like Von Miller in coverage. Because there are people in Chicago who the one complaint people had about Vic Fangio was, we have awesome pass rushers. Why are they dropping back into coverage? Because Vic Fangio does not blitz.
Yeah.
That's his belief is, I need 2 or 3 guys and we'll get to the quarterback. That's all I need. And oftentimes he is correct. That's all he needs. Sometimes he's wrong, and then your quarterback has a ton of time to pick apart your secondary. So that is a complaint that people, and that's why a reason why there are quite a few people in Chicago, they're like, we'll take Chuck Pagano. That guy's aggressive as hell. He likes to blitz. We'll take that. It's different. It's a change of pace. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, Von Miller is a great player to have. There's a lot of great players on that defense. There's a lot of good players on the Denver Broncos in general. Vance Joseph just wasn't a guy to get it out of them.
God, I look at this defense too, and I can't wait to see what they do with him because I mean, I know what you're saying, like, and that's another reason too of like, for me, I look at it and a guy like Domata Pico, who's an unrestricted free agent this year, kind of a little older. If Ed Oliver is like. But that's the thing with Ed Oliver, too, I'm going to ask you about, because I had him going to Denver in my mock draft. Is Ed Oliver a guy, go back to the jacket incident, how's Vic gonna feel about that jacket incident? Because wouldn't Vic be a guy that's like, hey, man, I don't want no sass from any of my players?
I would imagine so, yeah. I mean, I don't think the jacket incident bothered a single person because the jacket incident
Except for Houston's coach who's not there anymore.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It was an obvious, this coach is a little mad that somebody's not doing what I want him to do. And he does a little temper tantrum about it.
He's sitting out because he cares about his draft stock a little more.
He was just like, it was just an obvious, like, I'm mad. Things aren't going the way I hoped. I'm taking it out on you because you're the one that made me mad.
Yeah.
But
like they could take him at defensive tackle.
Plenty of options.
Those linebackers, Von Miller, talk about Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall on the defensive end. Bradley Chubb, who they took last year. And I know what you're saying. Be prepared to watch those guys drop back in coverage and not rush. But it's like we talked about Ed Oliver and his ability to rush and get penetration on the line. If they draft him and he's one of those guys pushing forward, then I mean, that could be good things for the Broncos. It's just the offense is the biggest question mark. And
that's what the needs are.
Final thing I'll ask you, give me a percentage of 100% they do, 0% they don't. Joe Flacco is in Bronco Orange next year.
I'm going to give it like 30% because I really think he's going to end up on the Jaguars. I mean, that just makes more sense to me. The one extra thing I want to say about Vic Fangio and the one time where you're like, Vic, maybe this wasn't the place to go. It's just because you sit there and you go, got to go against Kansas City, got to go against L.A.
twice.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to win this division anytime soon.
Well, I mean, you got John Gruden
and here's
Mike
the thing.
Mayock, so you're good.
Yeah,
but Mike Mayock knows what a Raider smells like.
You can beat somebody. That's nice. But in order to have been in the wild card,
knows what a Raider smells
you
like.
needed to be 12-4 and still not be good enough to win your division.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
Yep.
It's going to be a little rough. Yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting. But also, I mean, Phillip Rivers has got to retire sometime, right? So, I mean, the Chargers might be looking for a new quarterback. And like you said, like Phillip Rivers at this point is just going to be the quarterback we all forget. Like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, he was pretty good, wasn't he? Because his team just doesn't win when they get to the playoffs. But this is when you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. Bronco fans, are you excited about this? Is Vic Fangio going to be the guy to get you back to the playoffs? Are you all in on it? Or are you like, let's see what we do with that offense before we start pushing the playoff and Super Bowl button? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.